for hopping on a Oh, there we go. Thanks so much for hopping on a call with all of us on this Monday morning. And we're just really excited to be here with you all. And I know maybe we'll get the Motown going on later on. But today we're going to focus on a critical part of year-end fundraising, which is basically writing and crafting that really strong pitch. And joining me today, we also have Courtney Hurt from the Institute for Nonprofit News. And we'll start with some quick introductions. I see a lot of familiar faces here. You might know us from the NewsMatch program, where we lead a lot of the trainings for members of INN. But I actually work at the News Revenue Hub. We're a nonprofit organization that helps newsrooms rethink the business model for news. So we work with about 72 newsrooms, and over the last 5 years, we've helped them raise over $40 million in reader revenue support. And we help with helping you craft a forward-facing strategy that really combines audience development and membership together. And we also have a back-end tech stack to help you easily manage your donations. And we're actually going to be rolling out a new product next year called the News Revenue Engine, which will make it even easier for newsrooms. So I'm excited to hopefully work with some of you in that way as well. I'm going to let Courtney quickly introduce herself as well as INN and a little bit about NewsMatch.
Thank you, Christina. Courtney Hurt here from the Institute for Nonprofit News, and we're a member organization for nonprofit newsrooms. We provide a number of business services, really designed to help newsrooms increase their business operations and grow revenue. And one of those pilot initiatives at INN is NewsMatch, which you might be familiar with, but it's essentially a collaborative fundraising campaign really centered on this idea of matching gifts. We raise a pot of money from national funders who match the gifts and donations made to INN membership organizations. And we really, through this program over the last 5 years, have really learned the process of strong pitches and strong appeals and how to basically build in incentives into your campaign that can grow revenue.
Yeah, thank you. And one other thing I'll add is, Courtney and I, prior to these roles at the Hub and INN, we have also worked in newsrooms as well. I used to run the membership program at Voice of San Diego, and Courtney worked at WDET in Detroit. And so we definitely know what it's like to kind of be at the home stretch of the year and figuring out how do we launch this campaign, or even what are all the things that you're balancing between, editorial needs, your business model, and how to kind of bridge the gap and figure out really how to prioritize your time, especially during a busy time of year. And since we are really busy, I think we're just going to dive into a really critical part of your campaign, which is the pitch. I think, all of us, as journalists, we are really great at telling other people's stories, but sometimes we're not great at telling our own. And so I want you to keep that in the back of your mind during today's session. What is it that you want your readers to know about your newsroom? And since we have kind of a small group today, and maybe we'll get a few more, but since it's a pretty good size, I thought maybe we could, kick things off either in a chat, or if you feel comfortable unmuting, what are some of the things that you think would be really important for a reader to know about your newsroom? It could be that maybe you're a nonprofit organization, or that you're supported by readers, or even have, a formal membership program. You cover a certain topic in your community, or maybe as a single subject organization, this is your lane. You're an expert in this subject. Or maybe that you host events or have other ways for readers to connect with you. So I'm going to take a moment and just kind of hand it over to see, what do you want to know? Your readers want to know. I'd love to hear some additional suggestions of what's important.
I think while that's going, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, thank you. Well, hi, my name is Jennifer Etchison, and I work at the Crestone Eagle. We've been a very small, rural, independently owned paper for 32 years. And people often come in from out of town and pick up our paper and just say it's the best paper they've ever read. They didn't expect it from a small town. And so we want people to know that we're making the transition from a for-profit to a nonprofit. And we're starting everything new from scratch: social media, newsletters. We're involved with the December fundraiser with Collab. We're just kind of exploding right now, and everything's brand new for what we're doing because we're transitioning kind of into a new editor and those kind of things. So we'd love any advice that you guys have for us.
I love that. That's great. I feel like that's a great moment to share with your readers. And I'm going to call out a few items from the chat. Erica shared, they're a small but mighty team. And I think you guys are covering the entire state of West Virginia, right? So you got a small team looking out for the entire state, which is really awesome. Pamela talks about collaboration. It's great to be able to work with other newsrooms to cover, issues from all different angles. Neil says he wishes readers knew about how important monthly contributions can be. Julie says that your reporters have expertise that are responsive to readers. These are all great things. And as you start thinking about this, I want to see if you can take it, one step further. So, for example, maybe you're a nonprofit organization, but why does this matter to your readers? Maybe you're committed to, editorial and financial transparency. So, Jennifer, these are things that you can all weave into the message. Like, really, what is driving this reason for your organization to become a nonprofit? And eventually kind of start leading and connecting the dots to help them understand what it means to be a reader and consumer of nonprofit news. This goes back to what Neil said. You're supported by readers, so you can become sustainable. Having this monthly revenue is a steady stream of predictable revenue that is going to keep you solid and really give you the flexibility to go deep on investigations. It's really, giving them time and space to do quality reporting instead of, just being in that hamster wheel. Maybe you're the only newsroom in your community that covers XYZ topic, and even going back to collaborations, you take this unique approach to cover a specific topic because you realize you need to have all of these voices and angles to cover these issues with care and responsibility as a newsroom. And then maybe, if you host your events, you can connect your civically engaged neighbors together. If you're a local newsroom, maybe that's really important to you to build this community of engaged readers who will, advocate for other neighbors or use your reporting to, as they figure out where to send their kids to school. These are all the ways that your reporting makes a small or large difference in their everyday lives. Courtney, maybe before we get going, you have a quick question you want to share?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat from Chris. He says one of the things that he really want to be sharing with, they would really want to be sharing with their members is based like their audience engagement. It could be open click-through rates such as MailChimp stats. Wondering if it's appropriate to share these details to really talk about their unique value proposition or their offer. And Chris, one thing that I'd say, I think it'd be okay to share these numbers, but I think they may not necessarily always translate to the reader as to what the actual number means. I think there's a way to talk about engagement, maybe in the form of like a testimonial might be a more powerful way, a more relatable way to talk about how engaged your audience is. Have one of your readers talk about how engaged they are and put a blurb in your newsletter or something like that. So I'd say, yeah, I think it's great to kind of lean into that, but sometimes numbers that make sense to us might go over the head of some of our readers.
Yeah. And the other thing I would add is, right now we are talking about year-end fundraising pitches and a very small, window of the year. But I think a lot of what we talk about will be evergreen. So, come next year, as you think about maintaining this relationship or deepening it with your readers, this could be a great way to, have a conversation with them. Maybe you could also ask them later on, we're really proud of our engagement rate, and we want to dig a little bit deeper with you. We want to know what it is about our newsletter that makes you open it every day and start to create this channel of communication so you have a better sense of what people like about your product, and you can, weave that into your messaging later on. So I wanted to share some examples from newsrooms that have been in NewsMatch the last few years. And these are pitches that they have been writing. We actually create templates for them, and we're going to share some with you as well today. So you'll have at least a takeaway to start getting some inspiration. But this one here is from Anthropocene. They are a national organization that covers environment and climate issues. And you can see how they're talking about their value here, credible science-based journalism. I wanted to just call out a few sections that really jump out to me. They're, again, talking about their lane, where their expertise is, and then, this value proposition. They do X, Y, Z, they cover these topics, and you're really not going to find this anywhere else. And I think they make it very clear about what would happen if they cease to exist, if they don't have this type of public support. With this example, this is another single subject organization, the Hechinger Report, and they cover education. I think this is a really great one because, they set this really big stage of everything, all the issues that, their potential readers could be concerned about, and then really focus in on the educational reporting, but help readers understand what goes into their stories. These are things that people may not realize, that if you're going to pay for quality journalism, this is really part of it. It's stories that takes weeks and months, careful research, time to build relationships and trust with sources, data collection. Data analysis is its own type of skill set. So to be a journalist and have the skill, and it takes a lot to produce a story. So again, it's about helping readers understand what goes into this type of work. And here's an example from NewsMatch, from The Trace, and they cover issues of gun reporting. And again, this goes back to this idea of readers' support can help really buy time for journalists to go deep on issues and break free from the daily news cycle, and just really dig in and get the truth. So these are all things that we think make a really strong pitch. Courtney, is there anything else that you would want to add to these examples?
I think that, having, in addition to the language, is just making sure that your unique value proposition is also expressed visually within your pitch, that things sound, the tone of your appeals, as well as the branding elements of your appeals, reflect things that the user might have seen from you on social media or wherever they came from, wherever they discover you, that it has some visual connection to your organization as well.
Yeah. And then also related to like a visual connection, I like this, intro right here, because when you're thinking about sending out a pitch, instead of having it come from, just the organization, maybe have it come from the writer, put the name of the writer themselves on here, and kind of explain, what drives them to be passionate about these issues, like what led them to this type of role and this type of reporting. I think it helps humanize, the people behind the newsroom and really build that connection with readers. So as we move past this kind of emotional part of the pitches, I wanted to share some quick tips with writing a pitch. One, all links should lead to your contribution page. At the end of the day, this is really trying to get money in the door. So try to eliminate every, distraction that's going to stop them from putting in their credit card information. So use bold language and have a strong call to action. So if you have this really amazing setup, and then you say something a little bit weaker, like, if you appreciate us, please, consider making a pledge or something like that. It's a lot. You may dwindle off, then, support us now, invest in us, some really strong language and being clear about, asking for monthly gifts, starting a gift of $15 a month, blah, 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 instead of saying, gifts of, I also think about it's important to aim high, because a lot of readers don't know what it is that you need to survive. So if you're saying something like, we need $3 a month, they think that's all you're going to need to be able to be fully operable. But if you really benefit from larger donations, anchor them at $10, $15 a month. And so they'll follow your lead. And then finally, create a sense of urgency by communicating progress and deadlines. You know, when we're talking about NewsMatch, the campaign is November 1st to December 31st. And we have, you know, we recommend to all of the participants to communicate those final deadlines, communicate things like, we're trying to raise, you know, whatever goal, $50,000, $25,000. We're trying to get 100 new donors. This day only, we have an ambitious stretch goal. On Giving Tuesday, we want to do X, Y, Z. If you're able to communicate your goals and your deadlines, that does create a sense of urgency. So readers feel like, okay, I'm going to have to participate and join you in this. So we're going to transition into a breakout exercise. But before we get into that, should we take a moment for questions?
Yeah, there's one question from Aura. Do readers read all of these paragraphs? I thought attention spans were notoriously short. Do you have a take on it, Christina?
Yeah, so I think there's an opportunity for testing to see, you know, what your readers will respond to if, you know, they prefer something really short and to the point. The other thing I would, you know, think about is, how does this fit into your existing relationship with your readers? If you don't really have a conversation with them about your business model, or that you're a nonprofit, or that you need reader support, and you go right into an ask, is that something, are they going to think, well, why? I've never, you know, why do you need my support? You know, you're just coming in cold. Is there anything that you should do to really warm up that relationship before you do some, you know, intense fundraising asks? So I think there's really a balance in finding what works for you. I also think, you know, these types of appeals add a lot of value to help readers understand, you know, what it takes to run your newsroom. So maybe you could pepper them throughout the campaign and not have every appeal be like that. And then maybe have just some short calls to action, maybe at the end of the year, saying, I'll keep this short. This is our goal. This is how much we have left to go. Will you give today? I think you can deploy all of those different tones and messages throughout your campaign. So maybe that's not like the cleanest answer, but I'd say try a little bit, find what works for you, and be ready to experiment.
There's another. Go ahead.
One last thing, like these types of paragraphs are also really good for, you know, major donors, or having an introduction letter to a foundation to help them understand your mission. So even if you take a stab at writing some of these, it may not be for your mass email list, but think about other ways that you can repurpose this type of messaging as well.
One other question is, how do you navigate not meeting your goals if you set them pretty high, but fall short by your deadline?
Yeah,
I can speak to this just really quickly, because at my previous organization in public radio, you know, we'd set these deadlines to raise money by the end of our fiscal year, or by the end of our calendar year. And there would be instances in which we did not meet them. And sometimes we would like pause for a week and then continue fundraising. Like, we're serious. Like, if we don't reach this goal, like, we can't do X, we can't do Y. If you haven't made a gift, like, here's the final hour, now's the time. We did stretch the length of our campaign. The other thing to do it is to know if you could still sell it. So say, for instance, you know, you don't have the capacity to do something that long. The other thing you could do is celebrate the moments in which you did win. So like, we might not have met our dollar goal, but what we did learn, you know, but we did receive our X amount of new members, or X amount of, you know, people made a gift for the first time. And then you could still celebrate some of those other wins that might not necessarily mean that you've reached that big number goal. But really, if you're communicative about what it is you need to operate, you have to hit these numbers. So the next point would be to maybe pause and regroup and go back to your audience again early in the year.
We have a question from Erica about how to pivot from urgent, timely calls to actions with the pandemic in 2020 versus 2021. I think, I know like 2020 may not have the type of, same type of urgency or just shock of just COVID and what this really means for our lives. But I still think in 2021, things are so unknown. And throughout all of it, you are a steady and stable voice of reporting that's really going to keep people informed as we navigate through what life is like after the pandemic, how schools reopen, or how policy is being created in response to the things that we experience with COVID. I still think that there's a lot of themes that you could probably pull, but maybe it doesn't need to be a world is on fire type of feeling, but maybe something more about steady reporting, reliable, that's here to help you make sense of this changing world that we're living in. For Julie asked, what do you think of Dear Reader? I like it. I think it should fit your newsroom. If a lot of newsrooms have merge tags, if they have a first name, they'll do Dear Julie. And if they don't have that information, they'll have a default default salutation. Reader could work. I'm just trying to think of newsroom. You have Dear Hubsters or something.
It really depends on the tone. Like sometimes, like you could also just say like hello, comma. It depends on the tone. Dear Reader is pretty formal for email, but like it can depend on the tone. You could say hello there, comma. Are other ways to make it a dear friend. You'll see sharing in the thread. Yeah, ways to make it a little bit more informal, but it just depends on the tone of your message too.
Yeah. We have a question from Betsy on thoughts on sending emails and mailed letters are both important. I think that depends on the recipient. If you have a lot of people who've traditionally given by check and that's where they are, then maybe you could send a batch of, direct mail letters to them. If this is something totally new and most of your readers on digital, it may not make sense. I think you also have to balance out the cost. How much does it cost to mail and how much are you likely to get back? You could try it and just be sure to track all of those numbers so you can evaluate if this is something you want to do again. I'll answer this one last question, then we'll transition to our breakout sessions. Tony asked, how much should we raise? What's happening in for-profit news, hedge funds? I think, this is a great theme for a pitch. Readers may not understand what's happened to the business model of news and why it's so important to have reader-supported journalism in their own communities. So, I would really bring that back to why you exist as an organization, what you're doing for your community, and just help them understand what happens at a national level and how that might impact them at a local level.
I would just also add, just be careful when you talk about the demise of local news. You don't want your message to come off as you're asking someone to save something that is declining. You want to make sure that you're describing your work and your organization as a success, as a response, as a solution to this decline, and not a desperate plea to save us, if that makes sense.
So we are going to transition to a breakout exercise where we're going to have some of you put all of this into practice. So I know we're talking really broadly about what are all the things we want to communicate. We're not going to cram it all into one pitch. And we're going to just step back for a moment and focus on, a single piece of reporting that your newsroom put out this year. So Courtney is going to drop a template into the chat. And we basically put together a framework for a pitch that was part of last year's NewsMatch toolkit, actually. And it's kind of Mad Lib style. So we have some prompts on, the red text is things that you should be answering, things to weave into the pitch. And then if you look at that pitch framework, we have another example, which is a little bit more broad. So those are for you to take back and really use for inspiration. So Yossi's going to break us up into breakout rooms. And, just with your group, talk about what's important to share about a story that comes to mind and what type of information that you want to communicate to readers to help them understand quality journalism. So we'll have a few minutes for that, and Courtney and I will jump into different breakout rooms and see how you guys are doing, and then we'll come back and we'll share examples of how newsrooms did this last year.
Okay, I am opening the rooms. Here we go. 1 second. Yeah, okay, we're good to go. Let me.
Hi all. So I got the chance to drop into a few of the breakout rooms. I was just a silent observer, and it seemed like a lot of great conversation was taking place. If anybody wants to share, did any insights come out of that, or ways that you're going to start, writing a pitch, whether it's for your email list or for another recipient, I'd love to hear just kind of your overall impressions from that session, or did it, any creative ideas? Did anything start flowing? Megan, I'm going to call on you. Thanks for raising your hand.
Hi. I know I always forget to lower it though. So in our group, we were talking about the types of stories we would want to share, and the fact that a lot of us publishers are also reporters, and how you sort of frame that email if it's a story from you, or if it's an email from you but the story's by you. And Tony came up with the idea of having the email signed from a board member, possibly, to kind of differentiate that.
Yeah, I love that. I also feel like sometimes board members are really eager to help, but sometimes they need a little bit of guidance and homework. So this is a great way to use them as a resource, or even ask them to forward it to their own personal networks as well. You could even give them a brief script that's, I'm a board member of this organization. This is what it means. I want to share this with you if you're not aware. So that's great. Anyone else?
I'll throw it. We kind of went off the rails a little bit and talked about a lot of different stuff, but as far as this particular exercise, it really has to start with understanding what your audience values in terms of what you do. And it's not just, we can't just say, well, we do journalism and that's important. Like, what do they get out of this relationship specifically, before because I went through this exercise, and I'm from the Energy News Network. We're like a trade publication. The way we relate with our readers is very different from, we had another person in our group who runs an LGBTQA publication in California. It's very different ways that we relate to our audiences. So this template, has to start with that question, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, just understanding your audience is really huge. And sometimes we may feel the pressure of a year-end campaign, but this is evergreen best practices that you could, slowly break up into chunks when you have more time next year. Okay, well, what I'm going to do next is just share some quick examples of how newsrooms used this template last year. And so this is an example from Coda's story to cover corruption in Eastern Europe. And, I won't go into how they answered this, but I wanted to show how they really wrapped up this pitch and really connected the dots to really bring it home. And what they used here was, reporters like Katya work hard on these stories. You can't find this anywhere else. It takes time and money. And then their call to action is just really strong. Support Coda's story to ensure reporters have resources to do the jobs they do well. Here's an example from Voice of San Diego, a local newsroom in Southern California. And this one is related to, vaccinations. This is, this story was produced last year. For our community, at least, it still has a lot of relevance. And this one is just quick, without people like you, we wouldn't be able to tell stories like this one. This is really ending with that urgency. This is their goal. And this is the deadline. So this is, the way that they wrapped up this particular pitch. And with that really takes us through just the prepared slides and exercise that, we had today. But I felt like before we went to the breakout room, there were a lot of great questions that were being asked. So I want to transition it to, a Q&A now. It could be about pitches or year-end fundraising. So I'll stop sharing my screen and feel free to drop questions in the chat, and Courtney and I and others. I know many of you have a lot of experience with fundraising. If there's anything that you want to share with your peers, I'm happy to transition this time to be more of a Q&A. Great, Philip, thanks for getting it started. How often is it appropriate to send emails asking for donations? Weekly? How often during Giving Tuesday? I think that, will really depend on your organization and your readers. I think we want to be mindful about not burning them out. You definitely want them to know that it's a campaign, but if you haven't, fundraised pretty hard with your readers before, maybe you want to start easing into it. And I would say, maybe start with at least once a week and then think about the different segments. You probably, if you have members who already give or donors that already support, you may want to, give them a break and relieve them from the pitches and take them out of those appeals. You could also acknowledge their support, saying, you've already given to us this year, but we're asking you to go above and beyond. You might know we're in a campaign. Courtney, I'm going to pass the Giving Tuesday, question off to you, because sometimes it feels like a very saturated day.
Yeah, I think the other thing to note is that even though you send, for a context, NewsMatch is a 2-month campaign, 8-week campaign, and I think there are probably 11 or 12 emails we recommend. So generally they're more than what people expect. So the only other thing I'd say is sometimes it feels like we're doing a lot, but oftentimes it's like that marketing rule, people have to hear the message so many times before they take action. I think Christina is right. You may not want to be as aggressive with people who are already supporting you. Maybe you segment them out of that much messaging. But most times I feel people in news underestimate what it takes. So the other thing I would say is diversify the tone and style of your appeals. You don't want them all literally looking the same, because someone will open it and be like, oh, this is the same thing. Change the change the tone. Some can be serious, some can be a little bit more casual, from a reporter or from a board member, for example. That adds variety. And on a particular day, like a giving day or like the last day of your campaign, especially if you're trying to hit a goal, I think you want to send 2 or 3 messages during that day, but each message should communicate progress towards your goal. So like if you're trying to raise $10,000 on Giving Tuesday, that Monday I would send, hey, tomorrow our goal is $10,000. I'd resend a similar note in the morning, and around 3 or 4 p.m., I'd send another one saying, here's how much we've raised to date. We've got till midnight to hit X. And then like around 8 or 9, I'd send another one if you're close to your goal. So I think on special days when you have something very tangible, you send a message, but again, they need to be relevant and providing new information to the reader if you're going to do something like that.
I just want to call out Julie's comment. They don't start their campaign until close to Thanksgiving and focus on gratitude to readers and donors and ask for their support. I love that emphasis on gratitude, because it's a way to prime the donors and help them and acknowledge them and make them feel supported before you go into your fundraising messaging. And it is mindful of their relationship to you, their past giving history, that sort of thing. Tony, raise your hand.
Thanks. We are delayed just a bit because we're trying to lock down our double match, right? Because that was suggested at the beginning when, in addition to the matching funds from NewsMatch, we're getting private donations to basically extend that, and we hope to have that locked down the next few days. Is that something? How specific should you get in talking about the match in some of these communications? Like, what's the best way to say, for every dollar you give, you're actually giving 2 or 3 or whatever? How prominent does that figure into your pitch, or do you stick with kind of the examples that we were using in our little breakout rooms?
Yeah, I think your call to action should definitely include the match. The matches are a great incentive. When people hear that their gift will go twice as far, they're more likely to step up. So definitely communicate that, make it prominent. And even if you have, a larger match already and you're still waiting to secure it, you can also, instead of waiting, if you feel like you need to get started, you could always save a match for a special triple match day or something, or a special match to get 100 new supporters or something like that. They're great ways to make a match work for you at different stages of your campaign. Courtney, anything else? I know you're working with a lot of newsrooms who have secured their own matches in different ways.
I feel like press go at all times. Don't wait till you get everything locked and loaded. If you've got the dollar for dollar match from NewsMatch, start hitting the ground running with that. And then what happens is basically people also just need versatility. Like, if you're telling them the same thing over and over again, if you can provide new news or a new angle, it's like, oh, like it's a way of them engaging with your appeal in a different way. So you could launch with, like, we've got this 10K from NewsMatch, and then when that donor secured, you say, wait a minute, like, this is a moment of celebration. Not only do we have this from NewsMatch, but so and so has just joined us in challenging you to support our organization. Now the cap is whatever, 10 plus whatever that new donor is coming in at.
We have a question from Megan, who is considering a soft launch into NewsMatch since they're a new newsroom. And if we have a template for that, could you share a little bit more about what you mean a soft launch into NewsMatch, like launching your newsroom and having it coincide with the campaign?
So we segmented the first subscribers to our newsletter, like the founding subscribers. And we were going to sort of have a conversation with them, just sort of telling them how important they are and priming them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's great to have a conversation with them, and especially if they joined earlier on in this year and maybe it's been a little bit dormant as you've been building your newsroom. Maybe that's a great way. Like, it's been a while since you heard from me. Let me tell you why. This is what we've been doing, and this is what we have planned for 2022. And then I think that's a great way to either ask for their support again or ask them to keep spreading the word or something like that. We have a question from Ashton. Anyone want to share ways they focus on getting those monthly donations, more than one-time gifts? I'm struggling with the NewsMatch doubles your gift 12 times language. I'm not sure that's clear. General language that you use to push towards monthly donations would be helpful. Yeah, so, maybe you could eliminate everything just to say, give monthly today, or you could have a whole day dedicated around getting monthly gifts. We're looking for 50 people to start monthly gifts today, and NewsMatch will match you the annual value or something. Maybe you could just really drive them to say that's all that you really need for the next 2 days, and just really push on the recurring gifts. I think it's also important to communicate, that steady stream and what monthly gifts will do for your organization. And maybe if there's a ways to adjust the default amounts on your checkout page, have it lead with monthly donations instead of one-time gifts, if that's possible as well. Courtney, do you have any other suggestions for, getting people to give the monthly route?
I think segmenting those donors. So like anyone that you have giving currently has made a one-time gift anywhere between the last 15 to 12 months and have not renewed their gift yet. Target them with a specific message to say, you've supported us in the past, but we're asking, we're asking that you consider becoming a recurring donor or making a monthly gift. And when you do, explain to them like how monthly donations just help stabilize you as an organization. I would lead with that and then say, plus, when you begin your first monthly donation today, it gets matched at its annual instead of 12 times. You could say it gets matched at its annual value. So when you give 10, and I also give them the number. So like, that's another way to clarify. So when you give $10 today, that means $120 for the, for name of your organization. You could also, when you give $20 today, that means 240. So maybe even actually spell out the numbers might help to make it more clear.
We have a question from Natasha about what type of reader support is more successful to raise, the membership, the monthly gifts, or the one-offs. I think this is, this really ties into how your year-end fundraising campaign fits into your overall goals and the ongoing work that you're going to be doing to raise money for your newsroom. Because, for us on our end, what we found, the lifetime of a monthly donor is, twice as long than, a one-time donor. And you have to put a lot of energy and time and money into retaining those one-time donors versus just keeping their credit card on autopilot. So I think there is, a balance, but if you're able to have the steady stream of revenue, that is something that's going to really help you be sustainable in the long run. Obviously, you don't want to turn away any money during the end of the year, but it's just something to keep in mind, is you do want to be running campaigns every year, but do you want to just come December, you're not sure every year what your budget's going to be because it is so unpredictable that you may have this drop off and churn. Just all things to balance. We have a question from Mary. Is it helpful to tie the goal to something more tangible for a donor to see? Help us raise X, which will help us raise X. I see Courtney nodding her head, and I would say yes. I think it is really helpful. I mean, I think I dropped into one of the sessions, breakout rooms, and there was a great conversation just about how readers don't understand how expensive everything is or what it takes. And if they value a piece of reporting, help them understand, what goes into it. And this can contextualize like what their gift will allow you to do.
We're coming just up to the top of the hour, 2 o'clock here in Eastern time. So I think we may have time for 1 or 2 more questions, but just wanted to let you know we're preparing to wrap up, and we'll share this recording back with you all in the next couple of days. So you'll have this along with the slides as well to reference as you work on your year-end campaigns.
I'm going to drop my email in the chat. If you have any other questions or even any feedback on the session, it'd really be great to hear from you. This is the first time I think we've done anything so focused. A lot of what we've done is around best practices, but we haven't really done a deep dive on appeals before. So.
Well, thank you so much for coming, everyone. And thank you, Christina and Courtney. This was Fantastic. I know I learned a ton, and I hope everyone else did as well. We'll be sure to share all the details back with you guys, so you'll have all of this to reference. So I think we'll stick around for another minute or two if there's any last minute questions, but I'm going to stop the recording now, and thank you so much.